Well, hello and welcome. So here we are. Okay, it has been a long journey, okay, coming from 1,000 all the way down. But we are finally now at the top 10 greatest fighters of all time in the Boxing Library in 2025 top 1,000 countdown. Now, just one quick note before I go through the final 10, okay, I am currently redesigning my top 1,000, okay, the ratings are going to be very different. Some fighters are going to be in very similar places, other fighters are going to move. I've already noticed a number of changes, including one little blip I did in my top 3 that someone knows about, but we won't go into detail. But yeah, ultimately, so that will come. So over the coming week, I will continue that, okay, with a view to getting that finished as soon as possible. But meanwhile, okay, let us complete the countdown. My fifth video from 5. Okay, so let us go to the fighter who comes in 10th place. And that fighter is the great Johnny Dundee. Johnny Dundee, the Scotch Wop, is just a pure all-time great fighter. Johnny Dundee beat 8 world champions, okay, he fought 343 rounds against champions, and Dundee beat 5 Hall of Fame fighters individually, fighting 335 rounds against Hall of Famers overall. Johnny Dundee, in a very reduced number, I'll say, had 47 fights against rated fighters. Now, it's scary to think, but his real number would have powered way past 100. No joke. He scored 17 knockouts, okay, 6 knockouts in 3 rounds or less, 3 knockouts in the first round. And Dundee, due to the rating era coming in when he was already very deep in his career, was only rated for 1 year. Now, he had a longest unbeaten run of 25 fights, and Johnny Dundee was pound for pound rated in my all-time rankings for 9 years. Now, he had 31 fights against pound for pound fighters, scoring 7 wins. He scored 5 wins against pound for pound top 3 fighters and 2 wins against pound number 1 fighters. And Johnny Dundee's opposition fought rate comes in at 16 from 18, and his opposition beat rate is 9 from 13. So Johnny Dundee had 32 fights against champions, including 12 wins, 15 losses, 5 draws, with 0 KOs. He has 35 fights against Hall of Famers, 35 fights against Hall of Famers, including 13 wins, 16 losses, 6 draws, with 0 KOs. And Dundee had 11 world title fights, including 7 wins, 3 losses, 1 draw, and 3 title defences. So Dundee kicks us off in 10th place. When we go to, yeah, massive that in it's 16. But there are 2 higher. So, maybe 3 higher, if I remember correctly. So, on to 9th place, okay, so we have the great Ted Kid Lewis, okay, to me, the UK's greatest fighter, never mind, I don't know, Hamid or Calzaghe. Ted Kid Lewis is the greatest fighter from the UK, fought from pretty much flyweight all the way up. Okay, captured British, Commonwealth or European titles, you know, at feather, lightweight, welterweight, middleweight, challenged, okay, for the world light heavyweight title, challenged for the European heavyweight title. You know, he's one of the greatest weight movers of all time. And to come from those low weights and twice be undisputed welterweight champion while beating a prime all-time great welterweight champion himself twice to gain the title in one of the greatest fight series of all time, Andrew, stop it. So Ted Kid Lewis, okay, beat 6 world champions. He fought 372 rounds against champions. And Kid Lewis beat 3 Hall of Fame fighters, fighting 305 rounds against Hall of Fame. Yeah, thinking of Paul Martin, he's missed out on big numbers. He'll catch up later, though. Ted Kid Lewis scored 78 knockouts, 41 knockouts in 3 rounds or less, and 16 knockouts in the first round. Now, Ted Kid Lewis, obviously pre-rated fighter, was never top 10 rated. His longest unbeaten run was a run of 46 fights, and Ted Kid Lewis was pound for pound rated for 5 years. Now, Kid Lewis had 33 fights against pound for pounders, scoring 12 wins. He scored 9 wins against pound for pound top 3 fighters, and 7 wins against pound for pound number 1 fighters. And Ted Kid Lewis' opposition fought rate comes in at 13 from 18, and his opposition beat rate is 9 from 13. So Kid Lewis had 35 fights against champions, including 16 wins, 16 losses, 3 draws with 2 knockouts. He had 29 fights against Hall of Famers, including 10 wins, 16 losses, 3 draws with 0 knockouts. And he had a staggering 30 title fights, including 14 wins, 12 losses, 4 draws with 10 title defences. So from Ted Kid Lewis in 9, we go to 8th place, okay, to a fighter I've raved about on every channel I've had for years, okay, the great 5-time lineal champion in 3 weights, Tony Canzoneri. Now, Tony Canzoneri, who could have been a 4-weight champion, had Charles Bud Taylor not spoiled his party when he was still a teenager, although, like I've said before, he did go on when he beat Bass and Dundee to become a teenage featherweight champion, and at that time, does he still hold that? The youngest American world champion. But anyway, Tony Canzoneri beat 15 world champions. He fought 382 rounds against champions, and this true all-time great, okay, beat 9 Hall of Fame fighters individually, fighting 260 rounds against Hall of Famers overall. Canzoneri had a total of 86 fights against rated fighters, and he scored 44 knockouts, 23 knockouts in 3 rounds or less, and 14 knockouts in the first round. Now, Canzoneri was top 10 rated for a total of 11 years. He had a longest unbeaten run of 31 fights, and Canzoneri was pound for pound rated for 7 years. Now, Canzoneri had 31 fights against pound for pound fighters, scoring 17 wins. He scored 7 wins against pound for pound top 3 fighters and 0 wins against pound for pound number 1 fighters. And Canzoneri's opposition fought rate comes in at 11 from 18, and his opposition beat rate was 8 from 13. Now, Canzoneri had 36 fights against champions, including 22 wins, 12 losses, 2 draws with 4 knockouts, and many champions he fought were some of the greatest fighters of all time. You know, you look at his title fight record, there's so much talent in there in terms of quality of opposition he faced. You know, like Sugar Ray Robinson, like other fighters. Fighters with title records like that who have all that top level opposition, for the most part included. That is what you call a great title record. Now, Canzoneri had 23 fights against Hall of Famers, including 12 wins, 10 losses, 1 draw with 2 knockouts. And he had 22 world title fights across the 4 weights he fought title fights in, with 12 wins, 9 losses, 1 draw and 8 title defences. So the great Tony Canzoneri is in number 8. When we go to fight at number 7, it is the long-time lineal light heavyweight champion of the world, Archie Moore. Now, Archie Moore, okay, beat 5 world champions. He fought 207 rounds against champions, and Moore beat 7 Hall of Fame fighters, fighting a total of 269 rounds against Hall of Famers overall. Now, Archie Moore had a total of 89 fights against rated fighters. He scored 131 knockouts, 58 knockouts in 3 rounds or less, and 16 knockouts in the first round. Now, Archie Moore was top 10 rated for a total of 24 years, and he had a longest unbeaten run of 25 fights. Archie Moore was pound for pound rated for a total of 12 years in my all-time rankings, and he had 27 fights against pound for pounders, scoring 14 wins. He scored 12 wins against pound for pound top 3 fighters and 8 wins against pound for pound number 1 fighters. And Archie Moore's opposition fought rate comes in at 11 from 18, and his opposition beat rate is 8 from 13. Archie Moore, as well as being one of the great punchers in terms of knockout record, one of the greatest, I call him the greatest light heavyweight of all time. Even though, you know, Ezard Charles bettered Archie Moore, you know, Ezard Charles doesn't have a 10-year light heavyweight title reign, you know, so it's kind of thing, you know, Archie Moore, for the most part, could deal with Harold Johnson better than Ezard Charles could. You know, you always go on triangle theories, but at the end of the day, you know, really, even though Ezard Charles bettered Moore, to me, Moore is the greater light heavyweight champion, because Ezard Charles was never a light heavyweight champion, and people would say, well, that's because he would have avoided. Well, he would have avoided, joined the avoided club. You know, I could name 200 fighters who were heavily avoided, you know, but I don't cry milk over them. So anyway, Archie Moore had 21 fights against champions, including 10 wins, 10 losses, 1 draw with 4 KOs. He had 31 fights against Hall of Famers, including 16 wins, 12 losses, 3 draws, with 8 knockouts. And Archie Moore had 12 title fights, including 10 wins, 2 loss, no draw, and 9 title defences. Now, onwards we go to fighter number 6, okay, and that fighter is the great Henry Armstrong, who in my personal ratings comes in at 4th place, but in these rankings Armstrong comes in at 6th, but really surrounded in top 10 by who is surrounded by. I don't think there's really any right or wrong, so to speak. So Henry Armstrong beat 16 world champions. He fought 264 rounds against champions. And Armstrong beat 11 Hall of Fame fighters, fighting 210 rounds against Hall of Famers overall. Henry Armstrong had a total of 81 fights against rated fighters, and he scored 101 knockouts, 37 knockouts in 3 rounds or less, and 6 knockouts in the first round. Now, Henry Armstrong was top 10 rated for a total of 10 years. He had a longest unbeaten run of 46 fights, and he was pound for pound rated for 7 years in my all-time rankings. Now, Henry Armstrong had 35 fights against pound for pound fighters, scoring 25 wins. He scored 5 wins against pound for pound top 3 fighters and 1 win against a pound for pound number 1 fighter. And Henry Armstrong's opposition fought rate comes in at 10 from 18, and his opposition beat rate was 8 from 13. Now, Armstrong had 30 fights against champions, including 22 wins, 7 losses, 1 draw with 13 knockouts. He had 21 fights against Hall of Famers, including 14 wins, 7 losses, no draws with 6 knockouts. And Armstrong had a staggering 26 world title fights, including 22 wins, 3 losses, 1 draw, and that record, current still standing record, 19 welterweight title defences. So there is Henry Armstrong in number 6. I'll have a drink of water. My throat is starting to feel not very nice. Quick swill of water. The coffee's gone. I ain't made a coffee since I started. I've got a bit, it's probably cold. But I brought some water in just to keep myself moistened so my throat doesn't suffer an archaic fate. So, from Henry Armstrong in 6, we go to fighter number 5, okay, and that fighter is the great 3-time undisputed welterweight champion, the boxing marvel, Jack Britton, a fighter who I've always said is criminally underrated by many. In fact, like I said, one guy in his top 50 who was criticising my ratings didn't have Jack Britton, I think, in top 40. There you go. So Jack Britton beat 6 world champions. He fought a massive 427 rounds against champions, and he beat 4 Hall of Fame fighters individually, fighting a total of 411 rounds against Hall of Famers overall. And in a much reduced number, Jack Britton still had 25 fights against rated fighters, even though when the rating era came in, he was in the twilight of his career. Had ratings been around for Jack Britton's entire career, his number would be way above 100, without a shadow of a doubt. Jack Britton scored 30 knockouts, okay, 8 knockouts in 3 rounds or less, and 1 in the first round. And Jack Britton, of course, pre-rating era fighter, in his later years he was not the highly rated fighter he once was, so he was never top 10 rated, and he had a longest unbeaten run of 25 fights. Now, Jack Britton was pound for pound rated in my all-time rankings for a total of 10 years. He had 43 fights against pound for pounders, scoring 17 wins. He scored a massive 15 wins against pound for pound top 3 fighters and a massive 11 wins against pound for pound number 1 fighters. And Jack Britton's opposition fought rate comes in at 17 from 18, and his opposition beat rate is 10 from 13. So Jack Britton had 40 fights against champions, including 23 wins, 13 losses, 4 draws with 1 knockout. An even more staggering number is 40 fights against Hall of Famers, of which Jack Britton won 15, lost 16, drew 9 with 1 knockout. And Jack Britton had the current record, considering the title fights as I do, of 35 welterweight title fights, including 21 wins, 9 losses, 5 draws, and 18 title defences. So, onwards we go. Voice crack there. I'm nearly done though. So, fighter number 4 on my top 1000 is another great underrated fighter, Maxie Rosenbloom. Now, Maxie Rosenbloom beat 11 world champions. He fought 413 rounds against champions. And Rosenbloom beat 8 Hall of Fame fighters, fighting a total of 288 rounds against Hall of Famers overall. Maxie Rosenbloom had a total of 151 fights against rated fighters, and he scored 19 knockouts, 6 knockouts in 3 rounds or less, and 0 knockouts in the first round. And Rosenbloom was top 10 rated for a total of 13 years. And not only did he do all that work at light heavyweight, and he fought a bit below the light heavyweight limit before that. But also, he fought a considerable number of fights at heavyweight, including beating some heavyweight contenders. You know, it was a point I made to someone on Facebook. I was talking to him, and they were like, "Oh, how many fights did he have at heavyweight? 1, 2, 3, something like that." I said, "No, he had nearly 2 dozen." Roughly. So, the great Maxie Rosenbloom. Okay, so where was we? He scored 19 knockouts. Okay, 6 knockouts in 3 rounds or less, and 0 knockouts in the first round. Rosenbloom was top 10 rated for 13 years. He had the longest unbeaten run of 28 fights. Just doing a recap, and he was pound for pound rated for 8 years. Now, Rosenbloom had a total of 46 fights against pound for pound fighters, scoring 22 wins. He scored 9 wins against pound for pound top 3 fighters and 6 wins against pound for pound number 1 fighters. And Rosenbloom's opposition fought rate comes in at 13 from 18, and his opposition beat rate was 8 from 13. So Rosenbloom had 40 fights against champions, including 19 wins, 14 losses, 7 draws with 2 knockouts. He had 28 fights against Hall of Famers, including 13 wins, 12 losses, 3 draws with 0 knockouts. And Rosenbloom had 10 title fights, including 7 wins, 2 loss, 1 draw, and 7 title defences. So Rosenbloom sits in 4th place. When we go to 3rd place, it is the great, all you can do really is call him great, Sugar Ray Robinson. Now, Sugar Ray Robinson beat 13 world champions. He fought 404 rounds against champions, and he beat 10 Hall of Fame fighters, fighting a total of 304 rounds against Hall of Famers overall. Now, Robinson had a total of 85 fights against rated fighters, and he scored 108 knockouts, 57 knockouts in 3 rounds or less, and 20 knockouts in the first round. Now, Robinson was top 10 rated as a fighter for a total of 19 years. He had a longest unbeaten run that came to 91 fights, and Robinson was pound for pound rated in my all-time rankings for a total of 11 years. Robinson had 39 fights against pound for pound fighters, scoring 28 wins. He scored a massive 16 wins against pound for pound top 3 fighters and 11 wins against pound for pound number 1 fighters. And Ray Robinson's opposition fought rate comes in at 11 from 18, and his opposition beat rate was 9 from 13. Now, Sugar Ray Robinson had 37 fights against champions, including 25 wins, 11 losses, 1 draw with 8 knockouts. He had 29 fights against Hall of Famers, including 21 wins, 7 losses, 1 draw with 9 knockouts. And he has one of the best title fight records you can find in terms of the opposition. You think, Fulmers, Carmen Basilios, Bobo Olsons, Randy Turpin's, Kid Gavilans, Jake LaMotta's. The strength of his title fight record in terms the Hall of Famers amongst is incredible. He had 22 title fights, 14 wins, 7 losses, 1 draw with 8 title defences. So there is the great Sugar Ray Robinson in number 3. Now, in number 2 comes the great Harry Greb, the Pittsburgh Windmill. Now, Harry Greb beat 14 world champions. He fought a massive 476 rounds against champions. That is a massive number, but pales in comparison to rounds against champions of number 1. Now, Harry Greb beat more individual Hall of Fame fighters than any fighter in history, with a staggering total of 15. He also fought 494 rounds against Hall of Famers, and Greb, in a much reduced number, still comes in with 48 fights against rated fighters, even though the ratings only came in the 20s, very close to the end of Greb's career. Greb scored 48 knockouts. He would fly way past 100. Greb scored 48 knockouts, 21 knockouts in 3 rounds or less, and 6 knockouts in the first round. Now, Greb was top 10 rated for a total of 2 years. He had a longest unbeaten run of 68 fights, and Greb was pound for pound rated for 9 years in my all-time rankings. An interesting factoid, all 9 of those years he was top 3, and a number of those years he was pound for pound number 1. Now, Harry Greb has a massive total of 57 fights against pound for pound fighters, and whereas Dylan had 52 with 29 wins, Greb has 57 with a staggering 40 wins against pound for pounders alone. Greb scored 16 wins against pound for pound top 3 fighters and 4 wins against pound for pound number 1 fighters. And Harry Greb's opposition fought rate comes in at 16 from 18, and his opposition beat rate is 13 from 13. So, Harry Greb, okay, had 46 fights against champions, including 33 wins, 10 losses, 3 draws with 0 KOs. He had 48 fights against Hall of Famers, including 32 wins, 12 losses, 4 draws with 0 KOs. And Harry Greb had 10 title fights, including 8 wins, 2 losses, no draws, and 6 title defences. So, people, that leaves us 1 fighter to go. I need another drink of water, then I'll walk code it, and then I'll get something to eat. Yeah, I've been up all night. Okay, I've had an hour and a quarter sleep and got up and thought, right, I'm cracking on. So I've made a few blunders here or there. My mind is not 100% active, but yeah, I've got through them. So time to end the playlist with the rightful number 1, who has some figures that are just so monumental even Harry Greb and Robinson can't compete with. It is, of course, the great mighty Boston Bone Crusher Sam Langford. Now, Sam Langford in my number 1, okay, beat 14 world champions. He fought 912 rounds against champions. 912. He beat 11 Hall of Fame fighters and fought a staggering 718 rounds against Hall of Famers. Whew. Langford, in a number that would be just multidimensional silliness in terms of comparison, still managed 22 fights against rated fighters, even though he turned pro in the early 1900s. His number would fly way past 100 as well. Langford scored 127 knockouts, including 53 in 3 rounds or less and 13 in the first round. Langford was top 10 rated for 0 years, being well past his prime by the time the ratings came around, and Langford's longest unbeaten run was a run of 35 fights. Now, he was pound for pound rated in my all-time rankings for a staggering 13 years. Langford also had a staggering 63 fights against pound for pound fighters, scoring 25 wins. Many of those were against heavyweight Hall of Famers as a former featherweight lightweight. Staggering. Now, Langford scored 4 wins against pound for pound top 3 fighters and 2 wins against pound for pound number 1 fighters. And Sam Langford's opposition fought rate comes in at 18 from 18, and his opposition beat rate is 12 from 13. So Sam Langford had I mean, these numbers are just silly. It's what he did, but they are silly. You even look at other all-time greats in top 10, and the numbers are just so silly in terms of being up there in stratosphere. It's ridiculous. Sam Langford had 82 fights against champions. That is more fights against champions, I think. What were Armstrong's fights against top 10 rated? 81. So from those 82 fights, again, many of them, over 50 of them against Hall of Fame heavyweights, he scored 39 wins, 28 losses, 15 draws with 15 knockouts. Langford had an also mind-blowing 63 fights against Hall of Famers, including 27 wins, 19 losses, 17 draws and 12 knockouts. And Langford had a just ridiculous 63 title fights, including 38 wins, 14 losses, 11 draws, and just a monumental 41 title defences across his 6 reigns across 2 weight divisions. So there is the mighty Sam Langford. There is my top 10. Langford tops the poll again. Will he top the poll? Paul, wink wink. No clues. In my new top 1000 scoring, where I admit when I first did it, I made a bit of a blooper. And then when I told someone, okay, the new top 3 of the moment, it didn't look right to me. So anyway, I went back to it and thought, yeah, that's what I did. So anyway, it was rectified. But there's my top 1000 fighters of all time. Big shout out to everyone who has followed me all the way through this journey, because it is a journey. It's like a journey through boxing history, because my top 1000 covers fighters across every division, across every decade, from 1890 to now. Okay, and there is the top 1000 done. So a quick word, what's going to happen now? I'm going to take a well-deserved break, 4 or 5 days, before coming back with career videos. In that 4 or 5 days, the work is going to be on, okay, to pound through and try and get as much finished as I can of rescoring my new top 1000 rankings, and career videos will resume at some point at the weekend. Okay, when the career videos resume, also the graph videos, the ring rating point videos will also resume. But the top 1,000, even though I enjoy doing it, I enjoy recording them and uploading them. I've got the top 1,000 on my channel now. There isn't going to be another one until 2027. Whether that is the 2-slide one or a normal one based on the new ratings is not yet known. It depends what happens in processing my new career files on when the 2-slide top 1,000 will come. It will come, but I have to achieve certain goals first. So the next top 1,000 in 2027 may actually be a normal one, but it will be using the new ratings. So it will be freshened up and mixed up a bit. So that's what's going to be happening. I'm going to take a well-deserved break for the rest of this week. Career videos, I'm already starting to get ready. Resume at the weekend. Whose video did I just get ready? I don't recall, actually. But yeah, I've got 4 or 5 of them ready. I'll get more ready through the week. So normal videos resume at the weekend, probably Sunday night I'll do my first one, and then career videos and graph videos will follow as normal. But yeah, big shout out to everyone who's followed me on this journey. It's a huge journey. Well done to everyone who's followed our way through. I've got the top 1,000 up now. Someone did ask me would I do another top 10 fighters per decade series, and I said, well, sadly my career videos and that have to take precedence at the moment. I do have 17 playlists to fill with career videos. I'm starting from scratch, whereas on my old channel I had 664, I think, on those 17 playlists, and I have to rebuild all of them playlists from scratch. So the work begins now, so that has to take absolute priority. I may do, when my new ratings are finished, I may do top 50 fighters at Modern Era as a little 5 video playlist. I may do things here or there, but the career videos have to take precedence. I'm not saying I won't do anything else. I may do, but the career videos are absolute priority numero uno. So there's my top 1,000 for the last time today and the 5th time today. I'll catch you back at the weekend when career videos resume thick and fast. But for now, I'm the Boxing Librarian. I'm out.